Committee meeting. It is 9:30, so Brent is going to open it with a karakia. And before he does that, though, whānau, I really believe that we should take turns. There's only a small group of us. We need to. I think it's great for us to do it in every meeting. Someone has a turn other than Brent, and it helps you to pronounce your words properly because you can go in the Māori dictionary and we'll help you. So just be aware that you could be chosen at the next meeting. So, kapa tēnā. Okay, all yours, Brent.
Kia ora katoa. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te taonga. Kia mā kini ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana te atuku. He tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora.
Thank you, Brent. This is also a waiata that we sing. So when we sing it as a waiata, it's no longer a hymn. So there's a couple of our hymns we do either. So if I choose you, you got a choice. I'll sing it or forget it. Anyway, our next one up is our apologies. We've got no apologies. We've got a full house. I know that person that's name's there was here. Yeah. So he is here somewhere. You're lucky I can see your eye winking, otherwise we'll have a few words around that. And don't forget, he is a chair of another committee and he insists that we do the karakia. So that's double standards if that's okay. So confirmation of agenda. It's not a long agenda, but it's a very good, precise agenda. So if anybody, is planning to leave and wants something up front earlier, let's do that. Okay, we have to have a mover and a seconder. So there you go. Well done, Robbie. And disclosure of interest. We don't get to see that. You know what you need to do around that. So we'll just tick that box that we've done it. So what we're going to do, because there's no minutes today, Koto, and that's due to the fact that the last meeting we have only one or two of us off that committee in today, and we can't. They tell me from Democracy Services that a new committee cannot confirm minutes of a meeting they went on. So there's no minutes today. So what we're going to do and fill up that little gap is that Brent, unscientifically, is going to just give you a general overview of our tour, okay? So that you have a general idea, if you're new to our table, what our terms of reference is about and how our agenda is set to it. Right.
Thanks, Karakia. Yes, so Karakia and I thought that with a few new members, it might be useful to just have a couple of minutes on the purpose of this committee. And whilst the committee doesn't have decision-making powers, it's quite a critical committee in terms of overseeing and providing oversight to a lot of the operational parts of the organisation, particularly our environmental monitoring and our regulatory functions. Which then, in terms of those reports that you see raise issues of concern, this committee then would make recommendations through to policy committee or recommendations through to council itself. And so there's a number of those parts of the business that you'll see before you today, and it's a relatively, we've only got 4 papers, but the reason there's only 4 papers is because there's been quite a lot going on in the regulatory environment in particular since this committee last set. You'll have seen the paper that's coming through from the Regional Consents Manager, Anna Maria. There's a lot of legislation that's come to hit this council over the last while, and it's really important that as governors you have visibility of that. And so in the room today, we have Anna Maria behind you, but also Mark Brocklesby, one of our most senior resource management practitioners, and Hamish Smith down the back, who will be here to help answer questions because, as I noted, there's been a lot of regulatory change. And we also have our compliance manager, Evan Billington, who's sitting in for Patrick right now if there are particular questions that relate to our compliance implementation. Tracy Nelson will be with us shortly. As you will have heard, there's been another interim decision from Plan Change 1, and so she will be here to run you through what that means from an implementation perspective. Remember, this is not the policy. We're not talking about the policy development. It's the conversations, not about what's in it, what should be in it. It's about what does it mean for implementation, and so that you have an oversight of implementation. And then importantly, the council through the last EPC had a real strong interest in what was happening in terms of our state environment monitoring. So Mike Scarsbrook will be here to give you a full overview of what's happening in the state of environment monitoring program. So you get clear visibility of what's happening right now and what's planned over the coming year or two. And there was a very strong interest from the last EPC and through, as I understand it, conversations between councillors and Chris around what are we doing in the environmental monitoring space? How are we using technology? How are we using new ways of being able to get information in an effective and efficient way? And so there's a paper from Ed Brown, our senior environmental monitoring manager. So like I say, only four papers, but four pretty big papers, and the staff are looking forward to both presenting to you and hearing your feedback. Thanks.
Goodbye. Okay. Okay, so our first item up is page 6, and Anne-Marie, Anna-Marie Arohamai is going to do that paper. Welcome to the table.
Morning. Yes, good morning, Chair and councillors. I'm Anna Maria De Beer. I'm the manager for the Regional Consent section in the Resource Use Directorate. Today, I'm going to take you through a presentation that summarises as succinctly as I can the content of the report. There are two parts to the report. The first one being an overview of some of the activities that have taken place, just to give you a summary of the nature of some of the headlines, if you like, in terms of our work for the first 7 months. So from July last year through till the end of January this year. This part of a report has been a feature of all the way through to the EPC committee for some years now. The second part of the report is an overview of some of the legislative changes that have occurred and are in play or on the horizon for us. And I started to report on this scene, if you like, last year, but didn't have that much to advise. This time round, with a lot of the changes that have come through towards the end of 25, there's more to say and share with you. I have, as Brent indicated earlier, I have some key staff in the room and online to assist in questions and discussions later on. Tina Warnock is Principal RM Advisor in the Resource Consent section. So she's online, and depending on the nature of the questions you have, I may turn to her for assistance. And as Brent said, Mark Brocklesby and Hamish Smith, if there's any particular questions around PC1. So without further ado, I thought I would get underway. Thank you for the first slide. So that just gives you an indication of what I'm going to go through. So this next slide is really just a summary of part A of the report. This is giving you, so we have a KPI in the LTP. So this is the first item there, giving you an indication of how we're tracking against that KPI. The KPI is essentially how many applications did we process within statutory timeframes under the Resource Management Act. Our measure in the LTP is 95%. At this stage, we're tracking at 99.898. So we had about 6 applications where we didn't meet that for various reasons. We also report and track how many applications we process. We have processed by external contractors. This is a feature of our business. It's a model that has been adopted by many councils where we try and manage the peaks and troughs of workflows. And so sometimes we do need to engage external contractors to assist. And at the moment, we have, or for at least the last 6 or 7 months, we've had some staff changes, which means that we do draw on some external processing. And so just to put that in context, the majority of applications we have around 800 to 900 applications processed by the section every year. And in this case, we have a small number that are going to contractors. This number doesn't include technical contractors. So sometimes we have to engage external specialists, whether they're ecologists, stormwater specialists, etc. So different figures for you if you're interested in those. I also regularly report on how many applications we have that are currently in a notification process. This is either limited notified or full notification. We've got 9 applications at the moment, and they're listed in the report. I also given a brief summary of the number of projects or applications that are subject to appeal or objections. And we've got 5 at the moment, and I've listed those specific items in the report. So we've got an appeal by Taharoa Iron Sands Limited and Bartram Trust, which is for a marine farm extension. Happy to answer questions around any of those later. The other area that I provide an overview on is how we're tracking with all the water consent applications that come in. So we have, there's lots of different figures I can give you, and they're summarised broadly in the table in the report, but I've just plucked out a couple of items there to highlight that of all the applications we currently have on the books, we issued 89, and that's region-wide, and we also have a deferral queue, which is a historic queue triggered by a historic plan change, and that has been reduced in the last 7 months. Next slide, please. So this is a slide on its own because fast track applications are now part of the new world for regulatory activities, and this that you no doubt have heard about. So I thought I'd give you a quick summary of some of the applications that are in this space, and it kind of goes in sequence. So the first step for people who want to progress a project is to seek referral. So that first group there, these are some parties that are seeking referral. So they apply to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Authority, to request that they go down a fast track process. So they're wanting to be referred through to the fast track process. So they have to apply to do that. We get requested by the EPA to make comments on what they submit as part of their application, and we do that. If they are accepted to go through a fast track process, that's the second group. So these ones have been accepted for referral. So the EPA has said, yep, we think your projects meet all the tests. And then there's usually a little bit of time where the parties go away and prepare their substantive applications. So these ones in that second box, they've been accepted for referral, but they haven't yet lodged their application proper with the EPA. There's a number of residential development ones in there that you can probably guess by the names. There is the last one, King Country Energy, is a hydroelectric one. The third box is projects that are currently, they've lodged their substantive applications and they're with the EPA and with panels. So the EPA create and appoint expert panels to assess and evaluate the application. So these 3 applications are currently with the EPA and panels, and a couple of these are almost, the first 2 are almost at a point of final decisions. We're waiting for final decisions to come through. The Taharoa Iron Sands is just recently with the panel. And then the final one is the successful projects that have actually gone all the way through that process, and they will now be kicking into actually undertaking the project. So that's the NZTA State Highway 1 Cambridge to Pairuri and Waihi North Mining. I've got an asterisk next to the Waihi North Mining because there's actually been an appeal by a party to that decision that was approved. And just very quickly, it's by the New Zealand Forest and Bird Society. It's very discreet in terms of the matters that they have appealed on. The one that relates to us is around some condition wording that focuses on submission of management plans. It's a pretty common feature of conditions when projects are granted consents, that management plans will be submitted thereafter for that cover a range of things that they don't spell out in full in the very early stages of their application, but they have to before they get underway with work. So that's going to be interesting. It involves obviously the appellant and Waihi North as the applicant, but also there's 3 councils, Waikato Region, Hauraki and TCDC, that are parties to that appeal process. Very early stages for that. I think there is currently discussions with the court about setting up conferencing.
Anna Maria, are you happy for them to take questions per slide?
Well, I've just finished. This last slide there is the part B of the report, so I'm happy to take questions to any of the matters I've covered in the first 3 or 4 slides.
Okay, our first one has been.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very detailed report, so it'd be good to take it in stages. So yeah, just a question there on the non-notified basis for the Taharoa Iron Sands Pit 1 mining. So we've obviously just processed that through. There's no additional concerns there.
So which page are you referring to?
Page 9, item E.
Is that on her slide?
It's on in our report,
Yeah,
page 9.
and she unfortunately is working off her slide, so don't
yes,
have that thing open either.
So one listed project has had applications processed by WRC on a non-notified basis under the RMA Pit 1 mining project at Taharoa Iron.
Yes, so it was a discrete project that was able to be processed non-notified. It didn't need to go through. So even though, Taharoa Iron Sands had a number of applications put into the list, in this one they actually applied anyway under the normal RMA process, and it navigated through that without notice.
The other thing I was just going to ask you about is Waikato River allocation, catchment allocation. How is the available allocation increased?
A good question. I might turn to Brett. I think I know the answer, but I will.
I'll grab it because this is something that we've been reporting through to this committee for some time, and pre the time when Anna Maria took on the role. So those councillors that have been around for a while will know that there was a period of time when the Waikato River and its catchments was over-allocated, oversubscribed, if we could put it that way. So we had more people seeking to take water from the river and its catchment than we had water available to allocate. So that created what you may have seen in the news, the term first in, first served, which meant as a matter of law, we had to process all of those applications to finish with the first one to get onto the next one. And so that's what created what was called the Waikato River deferral queue. And so those councils that weren't here in those periods before those, but that's where those terms came from. Over the years, though, as you would expect, people, we monitor their actual use versus their consented use. And we often then encourage them where they're not actually using all the water that they have been consented to use to maybe surrender some of that water. Or when their consents come up for replacement, their amount of water that is allocated more accurately reflects their actual need for water. And then a lot of parties out there identify that they've got a whole bunch of efficiencies and they just surrender some water. And so those collective measures around efficiency results in, if you like, water coming back from where it's being allocated into the, let's just call it the pot, which means that then we have water that we're able to allocate. And so a lot of work's been done with customers over the years to go from a position where we were oversubscribed to now we have more water to allocate than we have subscribed. I hope that helps.
Except there's still 97 applications in the deferred queue waiting to be processed. So you haven't allocated it all out.
And so that includes the water that is being sought. So even with that water that's being sought, there is still further water to allocate. So when you work out, because if that 97 was going to use all that water, we'd be back into a queue situation because we have more water sought than we have available. So some ask me what's happening with those 97. Generally, they're people who are currently exercising a resource consent. And so they are currently taking water lawfully. It's just the time taken to now go through and reprocess their applications. It's not preventing them being able to continue on with their business whilst that process occurs.
So water allocation is not now a constraint on growth.
In the Waikato, so it's a very good question. And Katarana is going to tell me off in a minute for being too scientific, but it's a very good question because this is about the totality of the Waikato catchment, the Waikato and Waipa catchment. Within the catchment, there are some sub-catchments where there are pressures, and there are pressures in the Hauraki catchments that Robbie will be aware of. And so it's not a simple case of saying there's water available in the Waikato, therefore there's water available. There's water available at the catchment level, but there are some sub-catchments where there are still pressures. Hopefully that helped.
Thank you.
That was good, Ben, because water allocation at the Waikato River has been something I've been involved around since the day I started. And the smile I had with him wasn't he scientific, it was the fact that we are still asking questions I started many years ago. So I try to keep tabs on allocation. I do believe for the Waikato River, the allocation has always been too high. But hey, we can't moan at the moment because the water's high and we need to get rid of it, but that's not the point. And another thing I found with the allocation of water out of Waikato is that some people over-allocate themselves. They've been allowed to do that. The deferral lane used to be people who, like you said, have got it, but they are looking at 10 years coming up. That's how we ended up in a big, huge debate with water care. So water allocation has been a big baby for mine, especially out of Waikato River. Thank you. Keith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anna Maria, it's just a question of understanding the process, and I'm wearing an economic hat. So in the processes, the steps there, do we as regional council have any say in the process, or once we hand it over to the EPA fast track process, are we totally out of it?
We have a put it this way. This is not the normal way in which we are used to running a regulatory process. It is a very bespoke and discrete set of legislation of which the decision-making powers, if you like, rest with the EPA in terms of running the statutory steps and the panels that are reported to each project. So, for example, the first group, project seeking referral, we get asked to comment, and literally it's comment. It's not asking us to assess a whole lot of things or come up with any recommendations. It's literally comment, and some of those are guided by particular pieces of the legislation, so we might refer to those. I'm more than happy to share some examples of that step. The types of things we might be highlighting are based on our reading of what they've put in their early referral application. There are these statutory documents that are relevant, whether it's the NPSs for highly productive land or for fresh water, things like that. We highlight the relevant parts of our regional policy statement that might be pertinent for the panel, if it's accepted, to consider and reflect on. We sometimes comment on if we think the project in its referral application is missing a chunk of something. We might say, hey, you've forgotten to look at wetlands on your site, that you'll need to put those in your substantive application. So it's those sorts of steps. And then that sort of feeds its way through. We're asked to provide further comment. When it gets to the fourth box, when it's actually with the EPA and the panels, that is when we're often, we can be, different panels operate differently. So some of them have asked us to provide comments on draft conditions, which we're more than happy to do. It's a very normal part of our work. We know the types of conditions we would expect to see for these sorts of activities. So we feel we're being useful in that step. But ultimately, whatever lands is the panel's decision. We're not giving evidence. We're not going to hearings, which we might typically do for large-scale projects if they were notified under the RMA. When it comes to our time, we are able, if we are requested by the EPA to do something like a comment or a feedback, and if we're asked by the panel to do something, so comment on conditions, we record that time, and under the legislation, we are able to recover those costs. That goes through to the EPA. So we don't issue the applicant, we issue to the panel, to the EPA. They have a good look at that and they make sure they're happy that those are all reasonable, and then they pass them to the applicant to pay, and then we eventually get paid. Apparently the cycle of billing that the EPA does but if hopefully that helps give it some insights.
Yeah, it's more concerned that some of it's got an economic benefit, and I just wondered how much say you would give it that, but you covered that in your presentation. So thank you for that.
Gary.
Being that I'm a new councillor here and put in on a mandate of trying to remove red tape and make things easier for businesses and get the economy going, I question I'd like to know the volume of the water takes that are actually there, and whether they're irrigation or whether it's feeding Auckland or so. But from memory, the QMX of the Waikato River in normal flow is somewhere between 280 to 500, and like in rain events up to 1460, 70 during the 98 flood. During the 98 flood, there was 12 seconds to feed Auckland and like the flow of the Waikato River. In a normal flow in the Waikato calculation, it was something like 1 minute feeds Auckland for a day. So I really question, are we doing everything that we can to make things as easy as possible for the whole district, the whole economy by being so strict on water takes? And I know that the growers in Pukekohe are going through renewing, and they're put under extreme pressure financially. Some of them have got several bores, and that's different to the Waikato. But I just question whether we're doing everything we can to minimise red tape and make it as easy as possible for business and the economy to prosper.
So I'll grab that one for you, Anna Maria. And there's two things. There's two parts to that question, Councillor. The part around is the system as easy as it can be is a policy question, and with not the rule frameworks are the right rule frameworks. And so Anna Maria's team gets to implement the policies that are set, as opposed to change them. But the answer to your question is absolutely. So if you think 10 years ago, this region, the Waikato River catchment, was oversubscribed and people were in a queue to be able to try to get water. The hard work that's happened between this team working and this council working with parties around efficiency of water use, resulting in water coming back into the system, is absolutely enabling economic activity, because now people are able to get water. So absolutely the work that happens through the and this committee having a particular focus on wanting to be continually informed of what the status allocation is part of that. So so absolutely. In terms of the numbers, those numbers that are still waiting in the queue, the vast majority of those are farm water, and the vast majority of those would have just been grandparented, but they have a growth element to them, and so they're seeking a little bit more water, which is why they've got caught up. And because those farmers are just continuing and running their business, whilst the paperwork is done, if I can put it that way, that also is helping the economic activity of the region by not stalling something, but by enabling it to continue whilst the process catches up. So absolutely, in terms of the question around what's happening in the horticultural sector, some of the challenges that do come are around water shortage, and all councils need policy frameworks around how do you manage water resources in times when there's water short, and that's set through the policy settings. And so you will see in the policy settings that the policy settings of this council prioritises water for humans and for stock, and for firefighting and those sorts of things, above water for irrigation purposes. And it's a policy question if the council wishes to change its policies around hierarchy of use, but the team operate just within the policy settings as they currently exist.
So you're okay with that? So from my kind of perspective, I believe the Waikato River does a damn good job in ensuring that the whole of the country from Waikato to wherever in Auckland feeds them. And remember that the legislation for the Waikato River is also the health and well-being of the river. And as well as we drain out of it, we have to make sure what goes into it is also good enough for it to be drained again. So that river does a lot of work, feeds a lot of people, feeds a lot of things. But in the meantime, we have a group of people that ensure the health and the well-being of that river is taken care of as well. Because, you know, it gets fed from Tongariro, Ruapea, and all of that river. And so we on the river, all of us, not just Māori, but everybody has a place to play to ensure that the health and well-being of that river will always be there for our moko punas. And we are doing that, and we are allocating water for feeding our people. We are the ones who helped allocate water out of the Port of Waikato to go to water care, to feed a place that's so overpopulated, it's not funny. So I think your question is relevant, but let's remember that Waikato River is only one space that feeds almost the whole of the North Island. And we have to look after its health and well-being. And if it does mean determining that some of the allocations are too high at particular times, then we as a council should consider all of that. And we do a good job of doing it. Do a good job.
When I say, just further to that, Katrina, is that when you take in also that under the Tongariro diversion, another 10 to 15% of at any given point in time is Wanganui River water put into the Waikato,
That's right.
which adds to that. So the amount, and then I come back to Auckland and the whole Auckland take can be filled in 1 minute at low flow. So it's a huge volume that is there. The other question is the irrigation for the growers, and which isn't putting pressure on other water resources because it's mainly kawa shell bed, which is glacial fed from Ruapehu, 600 feet below Pukekohe, below the area there. So there's a lot of growers though that feel that while that with evidence from Brown Brothers drilling that's been given in the past is that the volume of water in the kawa shell bed is huge and unmeasurable, really.
Maybe.
So,
Fine.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions from me. I note the Pepe Bridge has been taken out of the fast track process. Have we seen a consent come through for that yet through our normal processes?
Sorry, I don't know the quick answer to that, but I can find out and come back to you.
Cool. And the other one was with the change in duration of consent legislation, are we seeing the number of consents drop off?
Not at this stage. A lot of the changes that just came in through, and I'm going to talk to some of those shortly, towards the end of last year, haven't really sort of bitten yet, if you like, and really played out. So we're watching closely, but no, the team are pretty busy. There's still plenty of work to do. Part of that busyness is this space. So the fast track space, a lot of work happening there, partly because we have very short timeframes in which to have to respond and give input into the process. So in short, answer is no, we haven't seen a drop off, but we're constantly looking at that. Yeah.
And I did get Miffy to present to the Mayoral Forum on just the workload and pressure that the fast track is causing us and the amount of applications that come across the table of regional council now and how quickly that happens. So, yeah, no, I was just interested to see if people were actually pulling their consents out of the process and using that duration clause. But thank you.
Good.
I'm going to talk to that a little bit shortly.
So next slides. Anna-Marie?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the second part of the report, Part B, covers off all of these items. I'm not going to read them out, but that's just a list of the content of Part B. And in essence, there's a lot in motion. So I'm going to do my best to give you some insights into each of those areas. So if we first move to the next slide, please. So this was Consenting and Other System Changes Amendment Act that came through in August last year. I have reported on this previously. Again, we're still yet to see how some of this plays out. So two of the features, the first two bullets there are essentially it introduced some provisions that allowed us, when we are making decisions and setting conditions, we can take into account previous formal actions. We can take into account natural hazard risks. I'm pretty certain we have not made any decision or set conditions that have reflected on previous enforcement situations yet. But I do know we've got plenty of applications in at the moment that for urban development, residential living situations around and various pockets around the region where we are looking very closely at natural hazards situations, particularly flooding, floodplain environments and so on. So I know that the team are working on some of those things now. Another feature of that Amendment Act was that we are now able to return applications as incomplete if there's been no action from an applicant, in specified time limits. So what we do is we need to specify the time limit in which we expect a reasonable response timeframe, and that if an applicant doesn't respond to that, we could return it as incomplete. I'm not aware at this stage that we've done that or come up across a situation where that has been necessary. The other area of change introduced by this Amendment Act really focused in on wood processing and specified energy projects, and set a whole lot of new provisions to help facilitate those activities through the RMA. So they set a maximum processing time for applications. They specified that more details around duration and lapse periods. I'm not aware that we've had any applications yet that have required us to explore any of those avenues just yet, but they're there, and when we do get applications, we'll be applying those. Next slide, please. So there was another amendment that came through last year to the RMA. This was about duration of consents. Just at the very end of December, you will all have heard about this. So this introduced or requires councils to automatically extend the expiry date of consents for those consents that were due to expire from the date the Act was put in place, so the 17th of December, through to the 31st of December 27. So 2 years in essence. We're in so just to give you a bit of a summary on that then represents for us in our region. It's probably about 630 odd consents benefit and that equates to about 450 consent holders. In terms of that automatic process, everyone has that automatic extension, but council has 6 months to update its records. So we've got to the 17th of June and we're underway with that work now. But if anyone came in and said, have I got this extension, we'll be able to say, yes, you've got it. And then the paperwork follows that up. We have a bunch of applications that may already have expired or expected to expire within this timeframe, and they have been in touch with us and are relying on Section 124. You may have heard of this before. So this is about a consent holder can continue their activity even though it's expired, while they seek a replacement application. So that's part of an existing part of the RMA that the applicants can use. In this bunch of consent holders, basically they've got a choice whether they want to continue with their live application they have in with us, or withdraw it and rely on the automatic extension that is offered to them through this amendment. We're working with a number of parties waiting for them to confirm what they wish to do. You may also have heard that the RM replacement bills, which is I'm going to cover off in a further slide or two, they are indicating they might propose a further extension for consent holders to cover the transition phase, if you like, from the existing RMA to the new bills. And that further extension indicates that it may be through consent expiry dates would extend through to 2031. And we've done a quick estimation of numbers of consents that might be in that, might be able to benefit from that if the legislation does land as proposed. That's about 5,400. What this then means is, so we've currently got the 630 odd that are going to benefit from an extension now by virtue of this amendment. And we've got potentially a number of thousand more. And this will then mean that we've got a significant bulge in consents that are due to expire all at the same time in a number of years. This is pretty challenging for any council to then have to process in a timely way with that volume, all coming to expire at the same time. So we have raised this as a matter in submissions, and many other parties have spotted this and councils and have raised this as a matter. So we'll see where that goes. And it's not that it's the submissions aren't about opposing that. They're seeking, is there another way to offer an extension but not have them all come at a certain point of time? So we're hopeful that there may be some adjustments to that to make that more manageable at that point in time down the track.
But does the change in any of the RMA acts affect the extension? So if if there's some changes in a particular area where people are waiting for a new consent and then the extension comes along, is there an effect in the changes of the rules compared to the extension?
So for brand new applications, it wouldn't, because parties don't actually
Well,
have
an extension of a consent wouldn't be a brand new one.
No.
It'd be one that's already happened. It's
Yes.
already in place. Therefore, if there's a rule or change that's happening in that particular area, does it get affected by the extension or not? That's what I'm asking.
So I think I know what you're posing there, Katarina, and it's a really good point that consent holders need to consider. Do they lodge now? Because you don't have to wait for your consent to expire. Do you lodge now and you get assessed under the policy framework as it exists now? Or do you lodge at some time in the future when your consent expires in the future, at which time you'll
It picks up all the changes.
whatever the policy is at that time. And so those are decisions that consent holders need to make. And one of those consent holders is the Waikato Regional Council. And so no doubt this will be a matter, Robbie, as the chair of ICM. ICM hold more consents than pretty much anybody else in this region. And you and your committee and the staff that report through to your committee will be going through this very thinking process right now. What does it mean for the hundreds of consents that ICM holds to have their extensions?
But the thing is, Brent, at the end of the day, is it going to be feasible for them to take the extension because the new act is not going to interfere? That's the question. Or is it better that they wait for the act to change so they know exactly what they're getting? So that's the question I'm asking.
So once you've got your consent, Katarina, issued, then you've got your consent. It's your asset. You have it. So policy changes in future that relates to potential reviews of consents, but you have your permit, which is what I was mentioning before. There's people have to make decisions, and so as it is right now, there are a number of people who are under Section 124 who are saying, we've invested money, we know the policy settings, let's finish. And others are saying, you know what, roll the dice that the law stays the way it is, and I can just continue with my existing settings out till 2030, 2031. And those are business decisions that people are making. But I think Katarina is what Anna Maria is identifying, those business decisions aren't decisions that the regulatory team has control over. So Anna Maria has to manage a business with a significant degree of uncertainty whilst having a performance measure around timeframe compliance and the refunding of money when we don't meet timeframes. And heaven forbid, we had a bulge of 5,000 consent applications turning up at one hit. So hence the importance of the submission that Warren and Tracy will be taking down to the Crown saying, is there a way to achieve this outcome without having this unintended consequence? So hopefully that helps with the question.
Bobby, you got something to say?
No, and in that discussion, then now we've got landowners that believe everything's going to become a permitted activity. So
I don't know.
And
Yeah.
we're not going to know any depth to that till
Any
June or
depth,
July.
yeah.
So
Okay,
it puts us in a real, you sit and wait, or as you said, you got to choose where you want to go to get direction from there.
good on. Continue.
Next slide, please. So the next item is just a quick summary around changes in national direction instruments. These are the national policy statements and national environmental standards that we're familiar with. The government has been driving a package of work to introduce some new ones. So that's the first group there, and then some amendments to a group of existing items. Now, not all of these are relevant to us, but I've given you a list of the variety there. There's a new NPS for infrastructure and a new NPS for natural hazards. So when I referred to some of the applications that we're looking at in terms of natural hazard environments, floodplains where residential development might be coming in or being proposed, this is another new statutory document that we have to look at when we're evaluating applications. And for a number of these new yeses, they specify when they have to be given effect. So quite a challenge for us and for consent applicants is that if their proposal is still in train with the team and a new document like this arises and it requires immediate effect, before we've made a decision, we have to engage with the applicant and, hey, we've got some things that need to be looked at here. So that's a feature that does come through when new legislation is passed and new statutory documents like these. I'm not sure that we've had a situation yet where that's actually had a bearing on any particular application yet, but it could well be down the track. And yep, there's a summary of a whole lot of existing NPSs that have had various amendments to them. So again, whenever we evaluate applications, we look to see which ones of those might be relevant and evaluate them in terms of the proposal or the consent that's being sought. Any questions around that?
Yes, 3 questions. The NPS for natural hazards, is that going to have an impact on council? Does it put extra requirements on us?
That's a very good question, and I don't know the answer because I haven't pored over that document directly.
So
Team will have, but
if through the part of the business that Robbie oversees, are we putting it all onto Robbie? I assume when they seek consent applications, then it will be absolutely relevant to the consent applications that they seek. Mark, have you got any comment on that?
Yeah, the main comment I'd point out is that yes, it has impacts on the activities, within our functions that we consent. Probably the more important effect of this NPS is that it will focus the minds of territorial authorities in a space where natural hazard risk hasn't always been looked at in the depth that we would like to see, particularly in that sort of subdivision and development space. Hope that helps.
Yeah, second question is in the Local Government Water Services Act 2025, we cannot bring a requirement that's more or less restrictive than the wastewater or stormwater performance.
I think she's got a slide coming up on that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Perfect, yeah.
So this
Well,
particular
and
slide
my
is to
question
do-
when you get to it is,
yeah.
how is Te Ture Whaimana being applied there and what applications are there?
okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this part of the report covered off 3 pieces of legislation, if you like, relating to water services. So we had a Water Services Act that passed in August last year, plus Water Services Repeals and Amendments Act at the same time. And I'll talk to that in a second. And then we had the Water Services Wastewater Environmental Performance Standards Regulations. And these came in after these two acts were in place, late December last year. So I'll go through my slide first and then perhaps come to your question. So essentially, these acts and the regulations create a bespoke consenting pathway for discharges wastewater. And this is, interestingly, it only relates to municipal wastewater. So industrial activities that generate wastewater, this isn't something they have to, or that we need to look at for them. You're right in pointing out, because that was a key point of the report, is that when we receive an application from a local authority for a wastewater consent to discharge and associated consents, we cannot impose conditions that are more or less restrictive than the standards. Those are the standards that came in December, except in relation to Te Whainamana, the Waikato Waipa catchment. So those plants that come in, those where there are applications that come in from local authority in that space, we have to look at Te Whainamana as part of the evaluation. We're not as restricted there, and that's because of that piece of that arrangement.
But it will impact Hamilton City, for example,
Yes.
obviously the Waikato.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I had a briefing from staff who work in the space of municipal councils seeking consent for municipal plants yesterday. And so you may or may not quantify this in your mind, but we have around 60 odd treatment plants for held by councils across the region. So that's a large number of varying scales and sizes. The applications that we either have on the book that are coming in are a dozen or so. It's not a lot. There are some that are 1, 2, 4. I mentioned before, issues that are as they come. So I'm not aware of yet that we've got close to making a decision on an application that is outside of the Waikato Waipa catchments that are putting us in a position where we have to be less we have to pull back on our restriction in terms of the standards that get imposed. Haven't had a situation that we've had to contemplate yet. These things take time to flow through. It will be a very interesting situation where we have an authority that has an existing consent and the standard is here, that they currently operate to meet a standard, but these standards called WEPs, the wastewater regulations, they actually sit here, so below, and it'll be interesting. We're not sure what we're going to do if they want to stay at that higher standard in terms of the issuing of consent. So that's the dilemma yet to come to us, because if the applicant wants to stay at the level they're currently operating, how do we capture that in it? Obviously, it's different if they want to stay to the WEP standard, and we'll be bringing it down.
So Councillor, we can bring to you, if you're interested, the current status of their standard and what that would be relevant to the wastewater standards that are coming through. What I can tell you is, on the whole, in the Waikato catchment, they are currently well exceeding. So if you went to the Tuakau plant in Tuakau, the standards, the water quality that's coming in their wastewater is well in excess. Well, when I say in excess, I mean better. It's a much better quality than these standards would require. And I would say the similar thing for Hamilton City. But we can bring that sort of information to you if it's a particular interest of the committee. Previous committees of previous councils have actually requested 3 monthly updates on the status of compliance of our territorial authorities. And so for a triennium ago, you had that every 3 months, and it created some focus and quite a bit of improvement. But again, those are the sorts of things where I'd be encouraging the committee to work with Katarona about the sorts of things that you would like us to prepare reports on, because some of those things take a little bit of time to put together.
You finished?
One last question. In terms of, and I don't know if you come to it yet, it's item D on page 14. One of the benefits for the WEPs is wastewater consenting would be more cost effective. However, it's noted here that errors and exemptions apply in some locations. It's yet to be tested whether the consent process will in practice be less complex or less. It's paradoxical in this. And I just wanted to compliment you on this report. It's very detailed and very well put together.
Okay. Robbie. Oh, yes, you're out. Jean. Jean?
That Brent, you were just talking about Tuako and Pōkeno City, but isn't it on that third line that it doesn't apply to the Waikato River? In which case this is mainly affecting us in the Karakia and CDC area?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
It was just, I didn't, just wanted the council to be clear that a large number of our territorial authorities have already gone beyond what the minimum standard that because they're looking to long-term sustainable solutions for their communities. And so to be acknowledged for that work that they're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. I've seen that in industry as well, obviously, when they build these plants. I recall receiving those reports, and I think it would be really good to have that again, at least once, in say the next meeting, so that others can see what they look like. It's already been designed; it's just populating it one more time. And it was a really good focus on the municipal discharges and their compliance, because we don't want to get to a place where we are not aware of how things are tracking, because when it's the enforcement side of things, it always gets really uncomfortable and the community hates it as well, right? So I just think one report would be really good on that, and we can decide whether we need it going forward or not.
We'll note that down to make sure it comes to you. So just so that you know, Taumata Arawai has put a request to every regional council for information on all territorial authorities within their regions' compliance with their Three Waters consents over the past, Anna Maria, is it 5 years?
5 years.
So
How many years? 5.
So yeah, there will be a spotlight, and councillors.
Forget to voice them.
It's a good suggestion to have that reported through to you as well.
Thank you, and really interested in the Thames Coromandel area, obviously, because this will apply to them, and they did have a large number of.
And like Brent said, we always had that. We had that done over the many years, and there's no reason why we can't re-implement it. I know I've been involved with a lot of wastewater treatment plants, and how much there's been big debates with territorial authorities about their their wastewater and non-compliance So I'm happy to make sure that gets picked up again.
I just wanted to check. We're talking wastewater here, but it also applies to stormwater. Do you want to tell us how the stormwater functions apply, and do they also impact on region?
This is Three Waters.
So these are wastewater standards, not stormwater standards. Potentially, so Taumata Arawai, so The two
Wait,
waters, water, wastewater, water are heading off to the new entities, stormwater sort of staying currently whilst they figure it out. And I think there's enough for Taumataraui to do in the wastewater and water space that it's one of those, we'll address that later, but they have the powers, if that makes sense. They have the powers eventually if they choose to, but right now they're focusing on the two waters.
Does she still want to talk? Karina, okay. Yeah. So three waters were all those three things that Adam was involved around. Carry on.
Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a quick slide around the RM replacement. And really, the situation here is we're looking to see what's being proposed and trying to gauge what might be ahead. Obviously, we won't really understand the full implications until they're passed into law. A feature of the bills is they've introduced some transitional provisions. So they set out the entire act and then they also have some transitional provisions and they specify how we might all function over a period of time. The key message, I guess, is that for that transition period, for our work and activity, we will continue to rely on the current RMA until such time as the specified transitional dates are confirmed by government. And I think a trigger for this is when the new plans, the region-wide plans that bring together all rules and provisions for districts, cities and regions have legal effect. So we estimate that could be, by the time they get created, we could be 5 years down the track. Essentially what I'm saying is we're reading that we'll continue to use the RMA for our work and activities for probably around 5 years. There are some things that we have to immediately adopt that they've confirmed, and these are these new procedural principles where we have to act proportionately and be enabling. And there's a range of other things there that are quite discrete and specific that we have to apply immediately when these acts come into law, which is anticipated in September. The fourth bullet there is really just commenting on what's in the report, observing some interesting features around the permitted activity provisions, or how the statute has said how we should go about setting permitted activity rules. And it's got some criteria to them, which I think some of you have already been across as part of previous reports and council's submission. In a regulatory implementation perspective, it has some implications, those criteria, in terms of having to maintain a register, having some obligations about certifying compliance, checking written approvals and things like that, which creates a whole new area of work for permitted activities we've never had to do before. So, so I think you're aware that we've made some submissions to that effect. That has some implications. Next slide, please. So very quickly, just updating you around what the proposed Waikato Regional Plan represents for us in the implementation space. As you know, I think it's under appeal. There's 14 appeals. When we have proposed plans come through for our area of work, when we assess applications, there are, as part of the Act, Section 86F, that says that advises us how we should, when we're processing an application, how much should we look at the new rules that are coming through in that document. Basically it says we don't treat any of those rules until they're beyond challenge. And so with appeals that have been lodged, it may be that many rules in a plan we can't apply and apply and assess for a proposal. So we have to work closely with the policy team to find out as and when any provisions are beyond challenge, they're not subject to an appeal anymore. And so there are some provisions we know that are not subject to challenge, and that relates to the moorings rule. So this is just the last two bullets are recapping for you, if you weren't aware, that where there are mooring zones, and we used to have applications for moorings, this is now changing to a licensing model, and the maritime team process those. So they're gearing up to adopt and provide that service. Where people are seeking moorings outside of a mooring zone, that's processed by the regional consent. Not sure if there's just more.
Yeah, just a brief question on that, it's possibly for our chair as well. In terms of this, there's a shift to the mooring zones, and are we doing publicity on this? You know, is there a concern amongst boat owners about this? And obviously, the consent applications can't be received, so people are still applying for consent. So it's just a question of what are we doing to publicise this? Because obviously it's there since November 2025.
Are you going to answer?
No, I won't, because I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what we're doing to publicise this.
So,
quickly, I know you.
so I'll grab that. So the team are working on that. The current plan is to try to do this in a staged way, so that you would, because each zone is basically full right now. They're all full, and the consents will expire at about the same time. And so they'll go around zone by zone saying, "Hey, folk, now you'll be moving from a consented regime to a lease and license regime," which they'll be pleased about because they won't have to pay for a consent. And so, there's some work being done with the maritime team around how we'll go around progressively to move people from a consented regime to a permitted activity regime with a lease and license. And what that does is it will give those communities that have those zones with the harbour master the ability to ensure that there's a really efficient way of putting the moorings in place, so that that they run really efficiently. And so that's why the coastal plan team with Warren's leadership made that change, and it's a bit of work to do, but when we have our next EPC, Maritime will report, and one of the things that they will report about is how things are going with the transition to a lease and license scheme.
So essentially, we're not going to have a lot of angry boat owners at the moment, because I know annoying boat owners is not a...
We will not have a bunch of angry boat owners. We have somebody right now that's applied to replace their consent, and we've had to say to them, "Hey, you don't need to replace your consent. It's a lease and license system."
You got many more? Is this your last one?
This is my last slide, yes. So I've reported in the past around Plan Change 1, essentially what the consent section is doing to prepare for when it does become, when we do get a decision from the court and it's operative. And so like other sections in council, we are waiting for that to navigate its way through. As you all know, there's a second interim decision that was just released, and it had a very specific focus on Section 70 and permitted activity rules. My observation, I tried to, I read the decision and tried to find out when they might indicate that they would issue. It wasn't specific. They just used the words "without delay." So while there are some steps that they've advised parties in relation to that second interim decision, they're busy working on the rest. So it's anyone's guess. 2-3 months, maybe, not sure. Of course, you may also be aware that when they release that final decision, it is subject to an appeal process. So if parties wish to lodge appeals, they could lodge, and therefore that then pauses things for us as well. We don't go ahead and implement the provisions because we have to wait for those appeals to be resolved. So until such time as have the decision released and find out if any appeals have been, it doesn't sit at our table to commence implementation, but we are doing some thinking about what we need to do. It's challenging in terms of how much time we spend preparing ahead for that point in time. The report gives you lots more information into numbers of applications we're anticipating over time. There's a bit of commentary around the situation with the RM reform requiring us to continue to rely on the RMA for a transitional period of time, and flags that while Section 70 had some changes last year, making reversed lengthen there is an issue with Section 107, which is a and that section wasn't changed. They have very similar criteria in each of them, and so currently under the RMA they're kind of out of sync, and the 107 provision as they currently sit in the RMA itself aren't helpful to provide challenges for us applications, and concerningly the new bills, the equivalent sections in those bills, Section 70 and 7, aren't reflective of even the moved like Section 70. So that's challenging, and I think submissions are being made that we don't know if we'll see any changes, but that creates some uncertainties for us and challenges down the track in terms of how we might, when that point comes. We have been doing some work internally around how we might, how we navigate through Section 107 when we get applications, and that's relevant now to any other applications that are ungiven. But it's particularly important for the large number of applications that will be coming in for Plan Change 1. Now, I'm anticipating a number of you have got questions around this space, and I'm happy to take those. Also, I've got who's right across the.
So before we do that, though, we've just got a couple to say.
I just
before
wanted,
we go to questions.
I just wanted to make sure that the committee are aware that Anna Maria, when she mentions that provisions are only operative once appeals are resolved, is talking about our consenting functions. So to not confuse that with, we have compliance functions, because there are a number of rules in the plan that are effective because of Section 86 of the RMA from 2016. So rules around land use change, they're effective. It's a compliance issue. There are rules, there are permitted rules in there which were effective from 2016. So just wanted to make sure that there isn't a confusion around when we use the word operative. Anna Maria is talking about those that are in the impacting on the consenting business. So when we have our update around compliance in May, we'll be able to talk about what rules, in fact, between Hamish and Mark, they can tell you if you want to know today what rules actually have operative status effectively. The plan's not operative, the rule has effect. It's complicated, eh? That's why Robbie's down is making good decisions, of course. He'll be able to give us all the answers.
Robbie, so before we go to questions, though, you know, this particular take, PC1, has been around for many years, and reporting on it is important that we get it right and concise, because we're getting things from emails from Tracy over the time. She's bringing us up to date, the councillors anyway, that this is a new this is a new this is happening. And so if we're going to get things from Tracy on certain parts of PC1, I think we as EPC need to have a concise understanding of the whole lot of it and be right on par to the things that's it's important to us as councillors. I'm not saying what you put up is not important. What I'm saying is it gets confusing trying to understand what's you've written, what's you're shortened to summarize, and then how you summarize it, and what we get over the weeks from different departments on PC1. So thank you for that. We're going to go into questions.
Can I just add to that, Kate? Tracy and I are very, very clear about ensuring that things that relate to the policy development is absolutely policy committee. Where Anna Maria and the compliance people were talking about is whatever comes through here, this is what it means for implementation. Because there's so we have a very, very clear development implementation separation.
And clear is clear. You know, you could tell me a whole lot of things at the end of the question. I know would have been just as sufficient. You know, I'm just saying, you know, let's. I'll work with Brent around how we present some of these things, because sometimes the summary takes out of context of what we're reading in the board pack before we get it. It's not actually doing the summary that we need. So, ka pai tēnā anyway. Thank you. Questions? Who's first? Ben, Keith. Liz.
Oh, briefly. We are obviously getting questions about PC1 and where it's at, and so it's great to have a report filling this in. Chris McClay last night was chatting about section 70 and section 1, you know, and 107, and I now understand what he's talking about. It seems like the court has come a little way further and then stopped, but it's useful to understand. I think this is a very clear summary. I said to Tracy, there is no strategy and policy meeting coming up because there's not much on, but I wondered whether a briefing to the council could happen, and this might form part of that in conjunction with what she's doing. So it's just it's useful to keep people heads up before the train finally arrives. So,
and I'm not saying what's in here is great. That's right. But when you get a slide and a summary, we're going backwards all the time, looking at what the paperwork is saying, and all we need is some clarity, maybe. So I'm not saying this is wrong.
which possibly is.
Yeah, exactly. And S70 and S107, it's been around since 2016. So I'm sure we should have been able to have given that to our councillors as often as they needed it. Keith, you're next. Thank you, Ben.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair and Anna Maria. Just this in your dissertation, and I just want clarity on I've got two questions. So in the dissertation, you talked about we are making submissions now, particularly around the S70 and S107, because that's critical, particularly when we start to talk about what is a permitted activity. And the way I read the interim report, a permitted activity is actually a consent by subterfuge. So can you give us some clarity on that, please? Yeah.
So when I refer to we are making submissions, that's the regional council submission. I understand we have raised points about section 70 and 107. So it's not from the regional consent section, it's from its regional council submission highlighting to government there are some challenges there.
So have they been made? Are we able to see those submissions?
I believe that's the regional council submission.
Okay,
Yep.
that's good.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that was part of a council workshops.
Yeah, absolutely, it's part of the submission that came through from the policy committee, and absolutely, it's a matter that is one of the matters that I understand Tracy and Warren will be speaking to, particularly at select committee around the changes to legislation.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. The other part I'd like to raise, and I'd just like to raise it because I think it's a significant area of angst for the catchment of Whangamarino and Waikari. It's the tracking of the bill or the process for PC1 has Whangamarino and Waikari catchments as a high priority. I believe that they should be into another plan change because we haven't solved the problem, so we haven't. We've done. Mike's done the report, but there's no certainty about outcomes and how we handle it. So I'm just raising it. It should not, in my view, it should not be the first to be rolled out. It needs to be handled in a separate manner.
So if it's noted, Tracy is online. She will have heard that. That's clearly a matter for the policy committee and for Ian as the chair. Just to note, Tracy has put a note online that the policy team are currently putting together a briefing note on the PC1 interim decision number 2, and you can expect to see that early next week.
Liz.
Yeah, no, look, and support that. I saw Tracy's message on, then I think that will be gratefully received. One of my concerns, and obviously I was involved with this plan change right from the very start, but I'm actually really concerned that we're not bringing the region with us on this. I think that there's so many aspects of this plan change, and it's taken so long, and there have been interim decisions now, a second one, that if you're a layman, how the heck are you supposed to keep up with all of this and understand exactly where we are in the process? Now, I think actually what we've got at the moment on our regional council website's really good, but the last time it was updated was back on the 8th of September 2025. So I know I'm preempting it. You've probably got something in train already. So I'm just going to request that maybe we see more regular updates. September doesn't feel like that long ago, but if you are watching this closely, and there are a lot of farmers who are, it feels like that was a really long time ago. So I'll let you, I'll let you.
If I just grab that, because unfortunately she's just left the room. So Anna Maria is just, her paper is just about when it all happens, how's the consenting side going to work. Tracy Nelson, when she comes back, is about to give you a paper on the work that the PI team has been working on with the rural sector in preparation for Plan Change 1. She reports every 3 months. Very good question when Tracy comes back into the room to pose about what other things that you're seeing that you might like the team to be working towards. So that's a good question when Tracy comes back.
No, that's fine. I don't think in my time as an elected member that I've seen so many experts on a matter. And you know what, this is where mass confusion can take place, and I think everyone is looking for the source of truth, and that has to be this council. And our website, I think, has been really good in that already, but it's just a matter of keeping up to date with that.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
That is it. Thank you for your time and your questions.
Thank you. So we'll move that report. And a second, please. Keith, one of them moved, another second. So we're behind on time.
Tracy's here now.
Oh yeah, kia ora Tracy, ka hara mai koe. Tracy's here. She's going to do the next section of farm plan implementation. And before you start, Tracy, welcome to the table. A question was asked about updating our website on Plan Change 1, because the last one that's been updated was back in September. So it'd be great if you took an action plan, or somebody with him and the other Tracy, Brent, on what a regular update on Plan Change 1 because of the moving vehicle that it is. So it's all yours, Tracy.
Hi everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tracy Nelson, the Primary Industry Engagement Manager, and I have with me today Hamish Smith, our principal advisor, who's been heavily involved in Plan Change 1. So I'll take my report as read. Next slide. Thank you. So the purpose of the presentation today is talk about what we're doing in terms of implementation of Plan Change 1 and freshwater farm plans. Because as we know, there's uncertainty, but we also know that if we don't do anything and there is an operative plan, that's not great either. Next slide, please. So as you know, there was an interim decision in May. The Environment Court has acknowledged that it's been a really challenging task, not just for WRC, but for parties as well, because for the last 12 years, things have changed nationally. We're getting closer. There were some areas that we needed to work with parties on, and the feedback has been really complimentary on the efforts WRC has been making to try and find workable solutions with appellants, especially around stock exclusion. Next slide, please. So, as been mentioned before, an interim decision came out the other day, which was limited to Section 70. But I guess some of the key things for us is around the importance of clear guidance from WRC for people, and also low as practicable. And what does that mean? And that we're getting closer to a decision. Next slide, please. So look, what's our current approach? Our approach is that implementation activities, we want them to be able to meet freshwater farm plans and Plan Change 1. But our priority at the moment is working on those aspects which are unique to Plan Change 1. Our approach has always been, since the section was set up 4 years ago, that we collaborate with our stakeholders, which means that we involve them throughout the development of resources and systems. We don't just sit here and develop something in isolation and then go and test it. We're trying to build strong, trusted relationships with stakeholders because we're not always going to agree, but we all want the same outcome. We also have a monthly email that goes out to 300 people, so I would encourage you to get on that. Gina sends an email, just a very informal, what's been happening, what updates are there, because we know that saying nothing can create misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an update on some of our key projects that we've been working on. So with Plan Change 1, anyone over 4.1 hectares needs to register, and we need to build a registration tool. We're very aware, though, because of the uncertainty, that we don't want to spend lots of time or money on a tool. So we are creating a product which will meet our obligations, but it's not going to have all the bells and whistles on it. Before we created this solution, we had a number of workshops, and I know, Liz, you're at one of them, with our stakeholders to understand what they needed and how it could fit into their system that they have. So before you go and create a tool, I've learned that you create mock-ups, and you take these mock-ups to get tested with a range of people to understand usability. Do the questions make sense? Does the flow work? And then once we have that feedback, we take that to the people that actually make the tool, and they will create it. And we have a little, well, hopefully it works. On the next slide, can you push play? Does it work? To show you what the mock-ups look like. To you, Robbie.
So Tracy, are you saying this is a mock-up registered for Plan Change?
Yeah, so this is the mock-up of what needs to be in the tool, which we will take to, and we're doing it internally to see, do the questions make sense? Does the flow work? Can you easily click on to find where your property is? So just wanted to show you that we have been doing some things, but it is not on the website yet. It's not at that stage. Next slide, please. Oh, so just before I talk about farm plan integrity, so the digital solutions, that's involving the GIS team. It's involving, our IT team, comms. There's lots of people. It's not just the primary industry engagement section. Then when we look at farm plans, certifiers and auditors play a really key role because their role is to look at a farm plan that's been created and go, are these the appropriate risks on farm? And have the actions that have been identified, are they going to mitigate those risks? So it's a really, really, really key role which council won't play. These are going to be external people, and council's role is to approve them. So we're in the process of creating a system where people will get approved, but also it's going to be really important that you just don't approve them and then let them out into the wild and do nothing with them. We want to have a process where we can support them. And that's not telling them how to do their jobs, because there'll be things that they know more than we do. And there'll be things that we know more than they do. But at the end of the day, we want landowners to have confidence in this group of people that they know what they're doing. And so, I've had questions before about, are we going to have enough certifiers? So when freshwater farm plans were live, we had 63 people enroll in the national training. We had 49 people complete that training and 45 people enrolled in the Waikato specific training before it was paused. So we feel like we're confident that there will be the numbers of certifiers needed. But again, we want to make sure there's no barriers to people becoming certifiers. Next slide, please. So catchment information, so that's the bit of paper that you guys have got. Look, understanding the importance in your catchment. What are species which is important? What are some of the land classes? What are some of the risks? Where does your catchment feed into? That's really useful things. So we're continuing on with catchment information for all the sub-catchments in PC1. That might look really simple to you, that 2-pager, but what we did before we started is we went and talked to a range of potential users of the information to find out actually what did they need to know and how did they want it to look. And these insights were also along what actually needs to be in catchment information in the rules. People really wanted a 2-pager. They just wanted something that was quite simple, was quite visual, that they could print. And they also wanted a detailed web version, which had interactive maps and videos. So we decided to start with the 2-pager, which, to be honest, was the hardest part. To get that 2-pager, internally, we involved science, the GIS team, Tauranga Whenua, comms and design, along with a range of rural professionals, people from the hort sector, dry stock sector and dairy sector. The Matahuru, that was just, we decided to start in the Whangamarino and that's who we've used first. Next slide, please. So information and guidance, we've heard from the court and we've heard from our stakeholders how important information and guidance is going to be. We especially heard that developing slope maps, which are really easy to understand and use, is important. So along with the spatial team and some of the dry stock sector, we have been working on that. There is so much information out there on farm plans that we don't want to duplicate what's already been done by the sector. So we've done a stock take on all the resources available. There's about 850 of them in farm planning to identify gaps. And we're prioritising information which is around PC1 and is information that really needs to come from council. And again, we've talked to our stakeholders about that. Farm menus, many of you will know those. They were a collaborative process. It won an award. They're a bit out of date. So we want to go back to our stakeholders that helped develop them to say, do they need a complete revamp? Do we just need to tweak them? What should we do with this resource because we're in a different world to when they were created over 10 years ago? Another key part is when we ran our implementation workshops to get feedback from people, we really heard that they want a checklist so farmers can know, right, this is what I need to do, this is the information I need. And what was really clear was having tailored guidance for sectors and for catchments, because there's going to be variation. If you're a pork grower in Pukekohe versus a dry stock farmer in Cambridge. Next slide, please. Again, this was a project that was set up as a response from stakeholders saying there are so many existing farm plans out there. How aligned are they to what PC1 requires? Because PC1 has some unique requirements and we don't want people to have to double up. And so we want to do a gap analysis of those existing farm plans, acknowledging that PC1, we don't have the final answer yet. So then we can provide that information to farm plan providers so they can make adjustments if they want to, and farmers and growers can have confidence that their plan will meet the requirements. And for those of you that were at the Balanced Farm Awards last night and heard the Sherlocks with their tool they're building, we have been working closely with them around that, because it's about working together, it's not about working in silos. And that's me.
Questions? First one.
Madam Chair, and this is interesting. And on the back page, you've got this significant, moderate, and minor. So this suggests that in the Matahuru catchment, nitrogen and phosphorus aren't really an issue. Main thing is sediment, and that when you get to Lake Waikari, nitrogen and phosphorus are moderate, and that at no stage does nitrogen and phosphorus become a significant issue. That's the view that you have.
Mike's team created information on that. Mike, yep.
I think for the Matahuru, the primary concern and issue is around sediment. And while we're saying nitrogen and phosphorus less so, there are things that we would expect to see in a good management practice sense, that farmers are already using nutrients in a wise way, minimizing losses. But for the Matahuru, it's one of the catchments that has the highest sediment load in our region. It's discharging into Lake Waikari, which is a shallow lake where sediment issues are really major.
And so when it comes to Lake Waikari or Whangamarino, is that specific to Lake Waikari and Whangamarino that sediment is the major issue rather than nitrogen and phosphorus? Or does it only mean that this flows through into those?
Yeah, so
those are the impacts.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is to get people to understand, so farming in the Matahuru catchment, there are particular things to focus on. They also need to be considering what the downstream effects might be. So someone in the Matahuru has to think about what's happening in Lake Waikari, what's happening in the Whangamarino wetland, what's happening in the Waikato River, because they're all connected. But obviously, contribution being made by Matahuru is only a very small part, say what's happening in the lower Waikato River.
Yeah.
So and what we're trying to do in the catchment context work is make sure that landowners get and this is exactly what the court has asked of us, is we want you to make sure that farmers are doing the right things in the right places to make a difference.
I understand, and it's great to have something visual like this. I just hope it doesn't confuse someone if they're sitting in Whangamarino and they think, well, sediment's my main issue here. So if I'm in Te Huru, nitrogen and phosphorus are minor. But will I
Here,
be,
the sediment.
yes, will I be, will my consents be constrained because of what flows through from me into Whangamarino? Or am I only
Perhaps around
judged
the
on my own
consent. So
judgment?
from a science perspective, yes, a farm in the Matahuru is contributing nutrients to Lake Waikari and nutrients to Whangamarino. Their contribution is quite small, so any gains they can make. But I can't talk to the consent side of it.
Can I just grab that for a second? Because what you've identified is good feedback for us, Ian, about how different people might read this. So that's really useful. Which is exactly why Tracy does what Tracy does, which is not sit here and do it and go out and speak to our customers and our farmers about how this language will land with them. Because what Mike's saying is that when a farmer is developing a farm plan, and let's just put aside whether it's consented or not, it's just the farm plan, needs to understand what are the risks and what are the actions that I should prioritise first. Where should I go first to get the biggest reward for my effort? And so what this is saying is, in this particular catchment, sediment is the big thing for you. Doesn't mean that nitrogen and phosphorus aren't, but it's about helping them prioritise. So they have to, in their plans, have to identify actions and timeframes for when they're going to do things. And so this is information that our farmers have said would be helpful for them as they're going about prioritising the actions. Because at the end of the day, it's the actions that are the key things. Should I do this in year one or that in year one? Should I do this in year two or that in year two? And so your feedback is really helpful, because what we're looking to make sure is that anybody who's reading this, it helps them develop their farm plan and their action plan. So appreciate the feedback.
And just the other one is item 29. Our role is to ensure landowner views have been captured and incorporated into the action plan for Whangamarino. Is this all landowners, including DOC and iwi, or is it primarily farming landowners?
So the action plan was led by Mike, and so my role was to ensure that a range of farmers and growers had their views heard.
Madam Chair. Just, I've got a couple of queries, and so in the PC1 process, the Environment Court was quite basically gave direction that existing farm plan mechanisms given high priority as we go into PC1. Now, in this presentation, Tracy, you have sort of been working on farm plans, and I know there's a lot of people who've been working on it. It goes back to Chris McClay, did a lot of work on it many years ago. What I'd like is clarity so that farmers, when PC1 becomes operative, know what the transition or what the process is. So initially, can they use their existing farm plans that they have through Fonterra and the meat companies and that sort of thing? Or is it imperative that they go into this new model that you've got? So can you give us some clarity on that part? And I've got a couple more questions.
So that's why we're doing the gap analysis, to see what the gap is, because there might be the latest generation of Tiaki plan might be very close. And so how we would approach that is going to be different from a farm plan that is very, very different. So that's why we want to do this piece of work, so then we can work with those providers.
As a matter of law, if I just answer the question as a matter of law, the answer to your question is no. So you have to have, under Plan Change 1, you have to have a farm plan that meets the requirements of Plan Change 1. That's what the law requires. What Tracy has said is absolutely right, though. We're working with those existing parties to see, actually, your farm plan is basically there. It needs a little bit of a tweak, so to help them. But as a matter of law, they have to meet Plan Change 1. The complicating thing, which is the complicating thing for this council and every other council to communicate, is when the government brings out its new freshwater farm plan regulations, the current chatter, if that's the right language, is around transition. as you've just described. And we don't know what that's going to look like. Fortunately, we have Hamish here who gets to hear a bit more than the rest of us because he's part of a little subgroup about whether or not the minister will create some form of transition. And that's going to be our real challenge because you'll have potentially freshwater farm regulations coming out at the same time with a ministerial process saying this is okay in some sort of transitional way, but Plan Change 1 is coming from the court. Did you have anything to add to that, Hamish?
It's a general comment I've made previously, I think the workshop last year, which is that a good farm plan is a good farm plan. So it's been prepared well. Good farm plan has a good shot at being certified as PC1. That's at a high level. What the gap analysis is looking at is, are there some aspects of these existing plans that just might not cover some of the things that Plan Change 1's expecting of farm plans and one. And if there are gaps, then it might help those people preparing or providing those farm plan systems, and also the certifiers to identify, well, maybe this needs to be tweaked. That's the aim of Tautoko, what Brent did just before.
Okay, so I'll just add to that. While you're correct, it's correct. I'll withdraw my words. That once it becomes law, we follow it. But the speed in which we follow it, I think that we should indicate to our farmers that we'll do it in a measured way so that there's no panic. So that transition part is critical.
That's a really good point, and maybe Hamish can help with what the plan already provides in terms of the timing of when things need to be provided, because the plan in itself provides for some timing transition. Hamish?
Yeah, so I've got to be careful. I mean, there's still going through the process, of course, and we don't have a final decision, but the interim decision hints at that when it starts talking to the permitted activity farms and the sort of rollout of farm plans in PC1. PC1's staged. So it's not just staged for consents, as Anna Maria might have hinted at. It's the farm plans associated with that permitted and consented. So that does give us a bit of time to sort of assist those farmers. I guess there's the farmers that are likely to be up first, as you pointed out with the Whanga Merino, where going to be a bit more pressure on trying to get that all sorted up and running well ahead of knowing, I've got 12 months to get it done.
Okay, so I would again reiterate, if you can stretch it out, the better. So the other part I'd just like, and it was raised at a previous meeting, is in terms of stakeholders, is that are federated farmers and beef and lamb involved in that? Because up till now, the stakeholders have been a few little farmers, and 300 is only a small group of all the farmers going to be affected. And then there's been dairy in NZ and Fonterra, who do not represent the farmers, they represent their company interests. So just asking, at what stage is Federated Farmers going to be engaged as a collaborative stakeholder in this process?
No, we have involved Federated Farmers and we've met a number of times with them. Things have been a bit quieter lately due to the uncertainty, but absolutely Federated Farmers and beef and lamb are very, very important and we are working with them.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gary, is Gary?
2 points that I pick up from this here is number one, the nasty little E. coli. DNA tested in the water testing by Amarua Mangatangi Catchment Group, identifying that the E. coli identified in their water testing is avian E. coli, not bovine E. coli, nothing to do with cows, but to do with specifically Canadian geese. I question whether that is shown clearly to be in what's been put under the evidence for PC1. So that's number one. Number two is the discussions that we had around Christmas with Minister Timatanga at Hinawai, sitting there looking out over a paddock of cows, 500 odd in the paddock, estimated 1,500 kilograms of organic matter in the cows on that paddock that we were looking at. Green paddock, you can see the cows. Over behind that, per hectare, 1,500. Estimated over behind, going, and the figures on the koi carp, which are not mentioned here at all, which have the major effect on your sediment, stirring up and the damage to all of the drains and the river and the stripping the Waikato River and all the waterways. It's not just Waikato, it's all of the waterways, all the way around. Now, 1,500 kilograms of cows on a hectare, you can see it. 2,500 kilograms estimated of koi carp under that dirty water, which has been stirred up, creating the sediment that is going down through those per hectare. You can't see them. Why are they not in this, and why are they not being really pushed? It's taking the easy out, is that there's nobody's been able to nail them up until now. They've now gone exponential. But they are not being addressed by you people. Why not?
I'll grab this first, and then you guys can fill in the gaps. So, the action, what you're describing is a conversation that needs to happen through the Whangarei action plan. So that's the conversation you'll have with Mike through, I guess, as it comes through policy committee, Mike, with the Whangarei action plan. The purpose of these is a different purpose. The purpose of these is to help farmers when they're writing their farm plans for things that they have control over. So a farmer, knowing that there is sediment challenges in the catchment, isn't saying to the farmer that you've caused that problem. What the catchment context is saying is this is an issue for this catchment. So then when the farmer looks on their property, they'll be able to look and say, well, what things could we do on our property that might address the sediment issue? So the purpose of these is to help farmers work out what actions they can take. I understand what you're saying, Councillor, about the broader, what's the cause of things. That's the project that Mike is working on around the Whangarei action plan. This is guidance for farmers about where they can take action. Team, do you want to add anything to that?
I think we've heard through the Whangarei action plan very strongly the messaging around there needs to be more work done on koi management, on koi control. So right from the start, we'd identified koi as one of the 4 big issues in the Waikato Whangarei catchment. And I think there are a range of things that people are already doing. So obviously there's lots of good work happening out in the catchments. You mentioned the Mangatangi Maramarua catchment group. Lots of great work being done by our catchment management teams, by Tracy and her teams. There's lots of great work, but there are some core areas where I think we're not collectively doing enough. And that's not just WRC, that's DOC, that's Fish and Game, that's landowners. And one of those areas is koi control. So I absolutely agree that if we're going to implement that action plan, increasing emphasis on koi control has to be part of it. And I just emphasize the part because there's a whole range of things that we need to look at in addition to koi control. And just on the birds, yes, the fecal source tracking work that I've seen from right throughout the country identifies avian sources often dominate during base flow.
Mm.
As soon as it rains, we tend to see bovine and ovine fecal sources dominating. So it's a simple physics. When it rains, shit washes off the land into the waterways, and we see that those bovine and ovine signals. But absolutely agree, waterfowl are a major contributor to E. coli issues and to water and to swimming water quality issues.
Thank you, Mike. Just to clarify some things, we've been WRC has never ever said they weren't involved in trying to help control koi carp, because I remember a few terms ago we gave some money to Aropu to offer them in how to do research. And for the Waikato catchment, I don't believe koi carp is the only thing we worry about right now. We got golden clams, you know. So just to point out one bad thing is not going to help the catchment anyway, because I remember also a group of people wanted to start up a company to catch koi carp to make into some sort of bait, and they were told they weren't allowed by two government entities. I think one of them was Fish and Bird, and the other one was Dog. So we are constrained in how we help with koi carp. If you got some great ideas to give to our team around how we might do some work that we're not doing already, that would be great feedback from anybody who can help ourselves around koi carp, around anything actually, any golden clams. Then there's geese. You know, Fred was a real big anti-geese every time he opened his mouth. So we have so many pests that we can't control, Gary. But we need your help.
Need to answer that question. That report there that was brought out, your report, Mike, Doc, and Fish and Game clearly puts the blame back on farmers for sediment. Clearly, there has not been enough blame put on the real cause, which is the koi carp. Now, it's time to admit it.
Can we
We'll
stick
note
to
it.
to what we're talking
We'll note
about?
it.
We're talking
Yeah,
about
it's
farm
noted.
plans.
Yeah.
Can I?
There's a place for
And
this
I'm just gonna
conversation.
cut that down.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Karakia.
No.
Yeah, so that's what happens when you bring in a beautiful piece of paper that is only, hey, this is what we're looking at kind of thing. But ka pai tēnā, Tracy. We will stick to the plan change farm plans because we have more questions around it. We're behind time in some things. So we'll take that off the table. If you want to talk about koi carp to the team, ka haere koe. Go and talk to them anytime you want. But besides only going to do, why aren't we, let's take a mitigation for them as well. Why aren't we doing this? This is how we can do it. Don't just take the bad side to our team. Always try to take some mitigation to offer them as well. Next one is Liz. You okay? Did you want to, sorry. Did you want to counteract something we just?
I want to just counter what they were saying over there. This document was made because its geology is the problem in this catchment. And we had a workshop, I think, of 2,000 slips was identified. That's why the settlement is an issue. That's why they identified it that way. I think that's the thing it wasn't about koi carp, it was about settlement running down the catchment because it's slipping. And that's the only way they can fix it is try and leave the soil on the hillside and not in the catchment. So you've gone down the rabbit hole with your questioning. That's what I was trying to point out.
Okay, thank you. Now we're all away from koi carp and sediment and all of that, because if anything's got bad sediment, it's the Waiho River and the Piako.
Yeah, I was going to counter.
So sorry, Liz, that's you.
Thanks, Karakia. Look, Hamish and Tracy, I can only imagine the very challenging environment you've got ahead of you, because this has been a really long and quite confusing process. So look, I did attend a workshop last year, which I thought was really helpful actually, and it was an open sort of opportunity for anyone, farmers, you know, people who own businesses in the Karakia area, and I think Te Amutu and Otorohanga and Wharepapa and whatever, you know, there was a really good cross range of people there. What it did was it provided me with the opportunity to understand where I could see the problems occurring. And funnily enough, for me, it all comes back to a really basic level, and that is going to be the communications around how we roll out these farm plans when the time comes. So I was wondering, you know, we've got enough information probably now to be able to understand what it's going to look like. Can we have a communications plan put together? You're probably already onto that, Tracy. Okay, great. And I think it should come to this committee, because if there's one thing that sometimes councils don't do well, it's probably just understanding the basics. And Keith, you said something before, which I heard at that workshop over and over, and that was around time and measurements, and understanding how much time farmers would have to be able to implement some of the changes. And that always worries farmers because they're always time poor, right? So there is actually going to be a lot of time, but we don't understand that as day people at the moment. So that comms plan really has to centre around that, even to the point where I think we were talking about in that workshop, to even gather people to register their farm. We have to allow a year for that. There are some people who simply aren't computer literate, don't even understand one, you know, barely get on a computer. So I think because of the range and because of the, you know, of abilities, but also the fact that this has been really confusing, we have to, I think we should as a committee approve a communications plan so that we all agree to what the plan will look like and what it will be, because that will be where potentially we see some failings, I think.
Yes, so we're onto a communications plan, and one of the things that came out of those workshops was that some of the organisations want to be involved as well, so then they can help ensure it's the right language, and then they can be a channel. So yeah, absolutely, we've noted that.
Thank you, Liz. And Jen.
Yeah, thanks. And coming at it as not being a farmer, but having learnt a lot about catchment on our recent field trip and such, well done. It's looks really good. And I really like what you took us through before with the registering your farm and such. I've got some scribbles on here, which if we have a break anytime, then we can to just take the team through it. But it's mainly just simple stuff around layout or just making it clear that this is farm plan guidance when you just have matahuru at the top. It could be anything. And so just a few minor things really. Yeah, including just as one key point would be on the back when you've got the downstream effects, even just something like adding the Waikato River as one of the things really helps people go all the way to the vision and strategy piece. The intent of all of this. Thank you.
Well,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Brent, I just want some confidence around this, that whatever we're designing, we saw a hell of a lot of money written off last year for IT, for support for what's coming at us. So just want some confidence around it, the fact that staff are aware of that, and wherever we're going with IT development, that we're making sure that we are across what other councils are doing in the area, because it's not just plan change one, but farm plans in general. Obviously Canterbury's done some work in that space, etc. So just if you can give me that confidence that we're not going to be writing off another 1.8 million in 18 months time, that would be fantastic.
I can give you absolute confidence we're not going to be doing that, which is why you'd have seen Tracy describe it as MVP, and it's MVP right now around registration. One of the things that's unique to this region is that the plan requires registration, and so others don't have to do that, so we have to do that, and so it's MVP. The next thing from that is, as they're building that, is to build it in a way so that you can add things onto it, so that farm plan submission, once you've got a farmer, as Liz was saying, used to the popping in to register, they have familiarity with that. How do we then make it easy for them to then add to that, popping my farm plan in you know, so absolutely.
If there's a wheel out there, please don't reinvent it.
Yeah, okay. Guys, the three of you have spoken before. Unless your questions are totally to PC1 and not this beautiful pamphlet on here, I'm not going to let you talk. So is yours totally to do with PC1 and not this picture? Take this picture off because I keep going back to it, Jordan. Okay,
So,
few seconds.
Madam Chairman, I'm not going to talk about this picture, but this picture, can you please make sure that you're sensitive to the farmer's reaction? Because my good friend next door to me is correct, because each area has some stuff that farmers can't control, and we just don't want for farmers to believe that they're the sole cause of it. So we've got towns, we've got mercury through the geothermal stuff, we've got the situation in the Waipa, and those are things that we should acknowledge as a region as compounding problems that are peculiar to each catchment. And so it's not a farm specific problem, it's an area specific problem.
Yeah.
So
But
please acknowledge that in any publication you do.
As long as it doesn't take away the mana of PC1, because right back from the day it started, like Liz said, farm plans have been out. And the most important things around PC1 back then was nitrogen and phosphorus. We've gotten bigger than that. So just make sure whatever we put out as WRC, that it is on par with what we are trying to indicate around PC1. Okay, Ben, quickly.
Just very briefly, picking up Liz's point about the comms plan, I see that there's 2,000 landowners that will require resource intent spread over 5 years, but that Whangamarino is the first tranche with 400 landowners. Them, and when will they kick in once PC1's active compared with the 2,000 farmers? Just in terms of the comms plan.
There'll be an implementation plan, comms plan, and yes, there will be a specific part of that plan for Reno. It's really hard now because when we go out and talk to people, they tell us, we don't want to, we've heard about this for 12 years, come back to us when we know things. So there is that fine balance that we're playing, but we are very aware that that is the first tranche, and that they're going to need different assistance from the others.
And this is part of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Probably last one.
I just go back to what Liz was talking earlier. I support what she was meaning by actually how many farmers are actually capable of filling in their own farm plans, because I think you should go to Fonterra and find out the statistics of how many farm plans are actually filled in by the person, the Fonterra rep that's there.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, you're right.
No, I should have said in the Farm Plan Integrity Project, we're also looking at developers, and they're going to be either a farmer that wants to develop it themselves, or it might be a rural consultant that doesn't want to be a certifier but wants to develop the plan. So yeah, absolutely.
I'd say you'd be around 30% of farmers are getting filled in by the resources from Fonterra. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. So
Thank
can I have
you.
a mover and a seconder, please? Yeah. So you got choices. So guys, do you want a 5-minute break? Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes is 5 minutes. So what's up there? 10:02, but it looks over there is 5 minutes. Yeah. Be back at 10:02 because we will start if I have a quorum.